All right, guys, as promised, we're going to bring you some behind the scenes. What's cool about the archery industry, there's a lot of guys that are out in the limelight, in the magazines, on television, but where the real magic happens is behind the scenes, at the manufacturing facilities, all the technology, all the people that are working in order to better archery, and that's what this podcast is really about. I'm really excited because here we are in Southern California, and we're at Victory Archery, and they have been dominating the archery industry over the last few years here with a bunch of brand new technology, and we're going to be able to show that to you. I'm really excited about it. So I've got Steve Greenwood, really good friend of mine, and somebody who has been working diligently in the area industry for a really long time. And then Jason, you're the national sales marketing person as well, huh?
Yeah. National sales manager. Obviously, we all kind of do a little bit of the marketing side of things. So we here at Victory, it's not a giant group, so we wear a lot of hats. So
you bet,
it's good.
You bet. Steve, you had quite a background. I mean, you came from the aero industry years ago and then came back.
Yes, Jim. By the way, thanks for visiting Victory. Yeah. We appreciate you dropping in on us, and glad to be able to spend this time with you. I've actually been in this industry in the physical archery industry since beginning about 1980. I was actually in the aero business then, competing, making aluminum arrows, and then that was from 1980 to about 1988. And I took a little break, and I was back in it again with another company called American Aero, another aluminum company. And then shortly after that, I got out of the industry for a few years, and I was back in again with Blackhawk Archery. The Vapor arrows, and here I am back again with Mitsubishi as the company that basically owns Aldila and Victory Archery. And we've basically, like you mentioned, we've taken the aero composites to a higher level, made a lot of improvements over the last 6 months to a year, and we're pretty proud of what we've done, and we've got a lot of really good things to look forward to in 2017.
You bet. You bet. And Jason, you've had your work cut out for you. I mean, Victory's been growing by leaps and bounds, and over the last few years, and I know that we've seen more and more people start to shoot them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had over the last year, we've had incredible growth. We could honestly say we've pretty much doubled in business over the last year, and so far this year, we're hitting our numbers. So everything looks solid, and there's definitely a lot more people shooting Victory. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. Like just a few years ago, when I first started, I think I started Victory like 5 years ago, and a lot of times you think an arrow's an arrow. I mean, every time you pick up a new arrow, they all look the same, they all feel the same, they all smell the same. Most of us can't tell the difference when we shoot them, but the aero technology has really advanced. It's making us a better archer. I mean, we used to talk about straighteners, we talk about aluminums, being able to pull them out. Arrows are expensive. I mean, back in the day, we all shot the XX75s or the Game Getters of the world, and we didn't have enough money to buy a bow at the end of the year because we had just been burned through them all, and we couldn't shoot them. They were like, shoot them 2 times, they're bent, try to straighten them, and they didn't work anymore, Yeah. But now the arrows are completely different, and the composites they're made from as well. But it's really cool to see you guys at an archery company that are actual archers going out and hunting with the product. And then once you know it, once you have passion for it, don't you just do a better job in the overall development of the designing the product as well?
Absolutely. Just like you, Jim, we live and breathe it. I just wish we could get out and hunt as much as you do, but we don't have that luxury. And unfortunately, as you know, during the archery season, the peak time where we'd like to be out chasing elk and shooting deer, we're actually out filling orders here or getting ready with the way the fiscal archery works these years. We're in the process of developing new product for the following year. So between August, September, and October, where a lot of people like you are out there having fun on multiple hunts, we don't get that. We do get out though. Don't believe me. We make it a point to be able to get out there and hunt. And Jason, me, and the rest of our team, we just kind of alternate on different hunts. And but the last few years, we've had to really kind of focus on the product and building Victory, and so we had to put a little bit of the playtime behind. So I'm sure we'll make up for it in the upcoming years when things kind of settle down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I just really appreciate you guys doing all that hard work and building all that technology so that I get to get out there and use the product itself. I've always been hard on products, and I'm just proud. I'm proud of what's happened. I want to go back a little bit, and I want to talk about the technology behind an arrow, because over the last few years, Steve, you taught me a lot about the archery industry and arrows in general and the differences between them, and then some of the advantages that I've been able to use personally out in the field with, FOCs, kinetic energy, straightness, and our big one was like, spine alignment, which is just one of the most breakthrough technology kind of things that just really did change the archery industry, in my opinion. So at the essence, at the cornerstone, one of the things I don't think a lot of people in the archery industry realize, that Mitsubishi is the manufacturer of the carbon that gets sold to the majority of the arrow manufacturers in the industry.
That is true to a certain point. Yes, that's right. Many of our competitors do use our fiber, and we're very proud of the fact that they do. They make excellent quality products as well. And so, yes, we do sell a lot of fiber to a lot of our competitors.
And being a carbon expert like you guys are, you probably kept a few tricks up your sleeve that you're brought out in the marketplace and really differentiate yourselves.
Absolutely. And obviously this technology people can dissect a lot of what we do and figure it out. But yes, we do have a few tricks up our sleeve. And like I said, 2017, if we can get our act together, you'll see some real unique offerings for 2017.
It's funny, just a few years ago, everybody's been talking about straightness retention. And I mean, on some arrows, we're paying like $40 an extra dozen for a 1/1000th shaft. I mean, that's a big deal, right? I mean, can we shoot to 1/1000th of an inch? Can we really see it on the target tournament? And obviously, we have some incredible archers that are shooting inside outs, like shooting paper and 3Ds and doing miracle work with them. But just a few years ago, I actually used to, spine align my shafts in a different way. I used to take like a water bucket, and then I would actually cut the little tips at the end of the knocks off so they didn't have any like extra little floating points, and I would throw them in the water bucket, and they would actually spin and rotate to spine up. I'd mark them, and then I'd orientate my fletches in that way. And this was just a trick or a secret that only a few archers knew about, guys that were really shooting, the tournament archery, and it was really not a technique or a tool that an average hunter would actually do. And you guys changed the entire industry. I'm so proud of what you guys did, because now we have the very first spine aligned with some technology that got implemented in the marketplace, and this is a game changer.
No, absolutely. The sad point of this whole, we just haven't done a good enough job of promoting it, like you said. We all along, Victory has always spine aligned that product, but we never indicated it on the arrow, and we never informed our end user that we were doing that. And during a visit to our main facilities where we build our shafts, we were able to basically, the idea came up through marketing that we're already spine aligning them. Why don't we actually indicate that on the arrow? And that's, I think 2015 was the first year that we actually went ahead and announced to the industry that all of our arrows are spine aligned.
Yeah, one of the things that I've just seen in the archery industry overall, especially on arrows, there's a big difference between what somebody actually says the arrow is capable of, or its tolerances, and what it really is. In spine alignment, it has a dynamic spine and a static spine, and the difference between the two of them, and it has a weak spot, and obviously it's a pre-preg roll process, right? The technology base, so it comes around and it's got that weak part, it's got that spot where it starts to apex out of the bow, and if we can create an orientation, a spot where we come out of the bow consistently in that orientation, we're more accurate.
It helps with the recovery of the arrow and consistency, obviously, with you try and reduce some of that archer's paradox as well. And obviously with the new TKO that we came out with, by special orientation of the fiber, we were able to reduce some of the torque that comes out of the arrow. And that was the whole idea of coming up with the TKO, and it seems to not only we know for a fact it performs well, people who are out there shooting through paper, seeing their groups tighter at 50, 60 yards, especially long distance. We've proven that, yes, the spine alignment has a huge impact on the performance of an arrow.
Wow, that's awesome. You guys also got a new ice coating on the outside of it, too. Tell me about that.
That was something that was a little bit. I've been with Victory about a year and a half now, going on 2 years. I think Jason could take you back on the history of that, on how it came about. But obviously, a lot of 3D shooters being able to extract the arrow out of it's a nanoceramic is basically what it is. But Jason could give you some history on when it began.
Yeah, like probably 4 or 5 years ago, we just by happenstance came across an individual who was down here actually visiting the facility on the golf side, and we ended up talking to him for a while, and he had this nanoceramic coating that he used on carbon fiber airplane parts and car parts, and it actually helped. What it did with the carbon fiber airplane parts is that it helped with the bounce back recovery of that carbon fiber part for high torque and just overall stress on the carbon itself. So he brought some samples in. It embeds itself into the carbon pores itself. That's why it doesn't wear off really easy. So by doing that, it gave it that really cool finish. It doesn't wear off. It embeds itself into the pores of the carbon. It's nanoceramic, so it's a ceramic finish. Drawing that across the rest of your bow is very quiet. It's easier to pull out a target.
Oh, I couldn't even believe the difference.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like
insane.
Back in the old days when we first started with carbon, I mean, we used to have to scrape them off, and it would actually melt the target itself. And so,
yep.
Well, like you were talking about technology. When I first got into archery, probably the same time you, Jim, bows, we were excited when a bow shot 200 feet per second. Actually, 180 to 200 feet per second, we thought we had the fastest thing out there. With bows performing the way they do today, the amount of kinetic energy that's stored on these arrows, as you well know, what the bows put out, the heat that's generated of an arrow when it's entering a target is pretty substantial. And a lot of competitors' arrows, even to this day, use either a urethane type finish, and they just don't hold up to a ceramic type finish that we put on here. And most of the paints that are used as a top coat are nothing compared to what we currently offer.
I was always amazed at the technology, in the overall arrow. But this outer coating, this ice coating, I really do believe that it helps with the penetration. I mean, obviously, if you're in a muscle and you've got some penetration issues, a muscle can be dry, unlike, having a lot of water, a lot of moisture content, like in a gut cavity or lungs. But it's really amazing how beautiful the arrow has actually turned out and how slick it is. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about, guys, is the technology in arrows, the diameter has actually changed, right? I mean, I used to shoot 25-12 PSEs back in the day, that were like huge foam poles, and now we're shooting a shaft that's very, very small. The VAP changed, I think, the entire archery industry with the small diameter shaft, Steve.
Correct. Like you said, if you go back even from the cedar arrows to the fiberglass to the aluminum arrows, the XX75s, the entire series that Easton made, they 2219s, 2117s were the kind of the bread and butter at when aluminum was at its peak, and in the carbon you had the 245 diameter or 246. Everyone's between 245, 246 ID, so which was in our case the V-Force arrow, but recently, in the last couple of years, with everyone striving for more performance out of a bow, longer shots, people taking, the distances, 50, 60-yard shots, definitely the smaller diameter, having less wind resistance downrange, has definitely become more popular. And however, the larger diameters are still probably a larger percentage of the market, only because they're less expensive. But I think as the technology changes, as we can make these a little more efficiently and drive the cost down, eventually you'll see that gap start to close.
Yep. I think that just changes the way that we talk about penetration overall, and the way the shaft, that I think is a major technology breakthrough, is the Outset Insert at the front of the shaft. Because obviously this is actually the OD of the broadhead, and then it slenderizes itself to the shaft itself. So in my mind, once that arrow penetrates that skin and it starts, I've actually burst a hole that's the diameter of the outside of the shaft, and then it just slips through the rest of it because it's much smaller in size and diameter. And so you did a bunch of high-speed testing And what did you find for penetration-wise, like the VAP versus the other stuff that was in the market?
Well, of all the testing we did, a lot of it done with ballistic gel, where we did monitor it on the high speed. Absolutely, unequivocally, the VAP currently outpenetrates almost everything out on the market. Definitely, when you compare the diameters, Victory in particular right now has in its hunting series the V-Force, which is a 245 ID, the RIP series, which are the 204 ID, and then the 166. If you take all of those three styles of arrows and you pick identical spine, shooting them out of putting them in a hooter shooter, so you take out some of that human error there and shoot them at the same poundage, same broadhead weights, keeping everything as close to the same grain weights, etc. You'll find that the VAP, percentage-wise, anywhere from 26 to 30% greater penetration.
Wow, that's catastrophic. I mean, if you've got the money, you definitely got to be shooting a VAP if you care about, every arrow that you shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, I think the latest thing that I think is going on in the archery industry and the arrows overall is talking about FOC. I mean, the last 9 months, everybody's starting to care about FOC and accessorizing them. And obviously we have, a certain amount of weight that we should have at the front of the arrow, a certain amount of weight in the end of the arrow. And just for those guys that just have never really done it, I'll just do an overview before you start talking about the technology and how Victory has done it. But, you basically have a slave and a master, right?
Yep.
And so you can either have more point weight or you can have a bigger tail feather at the end of it to be able to control it. And then the other thing that I think about is the apexing. Wherever there's an action, there's a reaction. So it comes out of the bow, it starts to burst up, and then it starts to apex, and the spine has to be correct for it to order for it to stabilize. Now it's flying through the air. I think you have to have the right balance. I think you have to have the right point weight with the right amount of drag in the back. And I've done a lot of testing with boning on a 3-degree offset, so it doesn't have too much rotation, right, to slow the arrow down. Right. But I think that when you have the right amount of point weight, it allows the back of the shaft to stabilize quicker because it actually has something to jar against. If it's too light, it starts to get out of orbit, right?
Correct.
But if we wanted the master to be the front of it with big FOC, then it's following the weight through the air. And if we have too light of it, and now we're spending more of our drag and much larger at the end of the shaft, to be able to correct it. And then if we have too much point weight, obviously it's following it, but then it starts to fall. You follow
Correct.
me?
Yep.
So what is the right balance? I mean, what do you guys, after all the testing you've done, what do you think the right FOC should be for an average guy shooting maybe an IBO type of setup,
This is one I think me and him go around in circles on.
Okay.
It's, light arrow, heavy arrows. There's constant debate as to what's the preferred. But from all the testing we've done in-house, and Jason will probably second this, we actually you say the FOC, we call ours the Extreme FOC, because obviously our outserts that we have on there, we have on our VAPs, a 95 grain brand new stainless steel outsert, which obviously puts tremendous amount of weight out front, and then we have an aluminum outsert that is 35 grains, which is still significantly heavier than a standard internal type insert. But again, I think it comes down to personal preference as to what, but looking at it, shooting out of a hooter shooter, looking to see what tears through paper the best, and also and what I look at is downrange accuracy.
Absolutely.
And to me, that's the most critical aspect of what I want my arrows to perform. And I found, specifically my own personal setup, the types of bows that I shoot, somewhere definitely between 12 and 16% FOC. And I found that in my particular case, and trust me, I don't have very good release, etc., so I need all the help I can get. I usually end up at around 14.5%. And I think the maximum where we started to see it work, under 12%, we know that it diminishes your accuracy tremendously. Above 18%, it also does the same. And again, FOC is also what type of carbon's being used, the diameters, etc., have a play in as to what that final FOC should be. But in answer to your question in a roundabout way, somewhere between 14 to 15.5% is, in my opinion, ideal.
Yeah. I've been at 13%. I've been shooting the aluminums, and my goal is to shoot a 5-inch group with a broadhead, a fixed head, at 100 yards. And I've been able to do that. Now, obviously, I have a lot more kinetic energy than most. I've been shooting 80-pound bows at 31.5 inches, so I'm kind of excessive on the other end, and I shoot through about 90% of everything that I shoot at. And I've been using the VAP. And once I have to tell you a story that I don't think I've told you guys, but the very first time I remember you giving me some VAPs, and I was top secretly, showing, not telling anybody that I was actually testing the VAPs at that time. But you gave them to me, and I went out and I shot my very first group, and I couldn't believe it. Like, I didn't even have them spinal line. They weren't even like water dipped. I just had an Insanity XL. I was out in Mexico. I had the entire day. I grabbed the bow, and without a shadow of a lie, call it the lottery, call it I'm not that talented, call it that I was a human shooter that day, but I shot the best group of my life. It's the only picture I've ever taken of any group I've ever shot, and I shot 4 arrows that touched at 100 yards without a shadow of a lie. And that's not even with the latest technology that's happening. And I was so convinced that the VAP had it. Now, it didn't fit in a quiver. It was smaller. It felt weird to me. It felt like an arrow that was kind of foreign. I had always been shooting big phone poles forever. And when I grabbed the shaft for the first time, but the more that I spent time with it, the more that I grabbed it, the more that I fell in love with it. And I can't imagine not shooting a VAP again. Like, it's just part of my recipe, and I trust it. I now have shot hundreds of animals with them, and like I said, over 90% of them I shoot through. It's funny. Now let's talk about accessories, because accessorizing the shaft, let's first explain to everybody what FOC really is. It's actually the balancing point of the shaft, right? So we have the geographic center, which is just the middle of the shaft, and then we have the percentage between the two of them that allows us to look at the FOC, the amount of front weight that we're actually casting. There's several ways you can do that. We can add more weight at the front. We could actually move the vanes forward, which I don't recommend, because there's a distance that's right with the counter pressures.
Right.
And we also can change the actual knock itself. And obviously, I'm in love with some of the knocks that you guys have been inventing. We went through a big technology change, and you guys started machining and designing and patenting and looking at all of the accessories to be able to build these things. And I watched the whole evolution of it. I'm really proud that I was part of that, team to be able to do that. But it's pretty amazing. So again, with the accessorizing, which a lot of people don't realize, they just buy an arrow, right? They go to the dealer, they buy an arrow, that's it. No, stainless steel versus aluminum. Complete change. Other inserts by other manufacturers that are being able to control the FOC and the amount of weight that we want in the front, right? Yep. Then we now have the knock, and then vanes all vary in, I think these are about 6 grains.
Correct.
Each one of them.
Yep. Correct.
I think this was about 3.5 to 4 grains on this knock. Maybe it's a little longer. Maybe it's up in the
7 grains.
Is it
7 grains? Right.
Okay, and what's an aluminum? Show us the aluminum, Steve.
The aluminum that we have for the VAP, they weigh about 13.5 grains. And these are machined on a 6-axis CNC machine. The reason we came out with this knock, we're a great supporter of boning. They take care of us. We use a lot of their vanes and their knocks. But there was a certain point in time where, with some of the new bows coming out shooting IBO 330 feet per second, the polycarbonate was just, we had a lot of people complaining with the small diameter shaft. We had, there's not much of a throat and there's not much meat going inside of the arrow. So, to be fair, it's not going to hold up. And we had tremendous amount of complaints of arrows, of knocks breaking. Yeah. So I was actually going on a big game hunt, and I'd had a situation where it happened to be in Africa hunting Cape buffalo, and I had a knock blow up on me. And so Jason and myself were talking about it. He shoots high poundage. We both shoot over 70 pounds on occasion. And we said, look, we need an answer. We need a solution to the immediate problem. Now, that's when we designed and developed this, the V-Knock for the VAP arrows. And the way we make them, in order to be able to hold the consistency and accuracy or the inside throat of the knock, we actually machine them oversize, and they're chemically reduced in size through the anodizing process. Now, it is but it was also, I can't tell you how many thousands of million knocks we ruined until we actually got the process down where we could get the weight, the grain weight the same, and get the throat the same. So it was a real learning curve. Again, Victory has not done the best job at promoting this stuff, and it's it's a niche market. Not everyone is going to want to put a little more weight. Here we're completely kind of defeating the purpose by adding weight to the back of the arrow. However, with the new 95 grain stainless steel Outset combined with an aluminum knock in the back, anyone shooting over 70 pounds, I really highly recommend it. It shoots really well.
Yeah.
The good news is most of the string manufacturers, or the bow manufacturers and string manufacturers, have now standardized the diameter of the string, and it helps with when you've got such a precision fit that happens. With a plastic knock, you've got a little bit more forgiveness. With aluminum, you don't, so your string better be dead on. And fortunately, most of the bow manufacturers have all got together and kind of building strings that are much better quality today, and they work really well with our aluminum knocks.
For sure. You know, I mean, obviously the straightening of the shaft, it's really cool to know that. But, you know, my dad used to say all the time, he used to say, you have to care. If you do everything in your life 1% better. You know, and I really have studied my entire life in archery and the love of it, and try to make myself a better archer. And if there's a better piece of gear that's 1/1000th of a shaft, it gives me confidence. It tells me that I'm shooting the best shaft made. And then, you know, the difference between straightness retention, which we've talked about for a long time, right? But now with the spine alignment, and you add those two together, that is an accuracy game changer. Obviously, our groups are tighter because of that, you know, and I have also been, you know, prejudiced because the bow that I shoot, it's the only really tunable system. So it allows the bow to be way more forgiving, and it allows me even to go down a spine if I wanted to. And so it's the good old days when it comes to archery, isn't it? I mean, this is the good old days. People really care. The competition drove it to the top, to where the cream's on top, and now people are taking advantage of it. And it's really just amazing that a shaft like this. Now, it's a myth or not, but can a carbon shaft retain memory and be bent? That's a myth. Well, not entirely. A carbon shaft can be bent and retain memory. If the shafts have not been cured properly, they will take a set, and so it's not entirely a myth. But if production shafts that have gone through all the QC spot checks should not have that situation. There are again, it all comes down to how the shafts are cured in the final curing. But we have seen instances where, depending on if it's a standard mod fiber, we've seen where you silk screen them and they use excessive heat to cure the silk screen. It ends up the arrows, the way they're orientated, the ovens, we've seen them take a set. Right. So it is a myth in the sense if the arrows are built the way they're supposed to have been built and followed all the inline processes, they should not take a set. Great. Hey guys, I know that there's 3 different colors, right, to the technologies, you know, that have been carried through the different brands for straightness retention. So the 001 is yellow, right? Yep. The Elite. And then we have the green, which is the gamer. Which is the gamer. And what is the gamer straightness? Plus or minus 3. And then we have the red, which is the plus or minus 6, which is a sport. Plus or minus 6 is a sport. Right. Yep. And so obviously there's not much difference between the two of them. If a guy wanted to, you know, buy a few extra arrows and save some money, that sport is still a great shaft. I mean, regardless of whether it's an VAP or a RIP or you know, these different diameters, I mean, this is still a great shaft to buy. Let's switch gears really quickly, because one of the things that we've been noticing in the archery industry, you know, the archery industry is only growing by 3% a year. And we've getting more and more, you know, transitioning people over. But one of the things that's exciting for me personally, because I got to share archery with my kids, you know, and I love watching the new toddlers come up. But one of the projects that one of my daughters, Caitlin, was just really excited about years ago was the Pink Arrow project. And, you know, I love it when a manufacturer cares. It cares for the people who buy the product. It launches something that has some effect. And so tell us about the Pink Arrow project. What do you got to say, Jason?
Well, the Pink Arrow project was actually started by Mary Hale because she was diagnosed with breast cancer and obviously fought it and won. She started the Pink Arrow project, and once she got that foundation established, she wanted Victory Archery to be the arrow for the Pink Arrow project, the one and only arrow. So obviously we jumped all over it. It's obvious it goes to a great cause. You know, parts of the proceeds go straight to the breast cancer awareness, and
that's neat.
And
we just wrote
technology.
a pretty nice check for it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's a good cause. I mean, we all like to have one in our quivers, or you know, whatever, and we like to see people to have at least one in their quivers.
High five on that, bro.
Absolutely.
High five on that, huh?
Save them.
Do it, dude. We got to save them breast cancer.
That's right.
We need as many breasts on planet Earth as possible. I mean, you heard it here live on the podcast for sure.
Right.
So Victory Archery is the arrow to buy because we're saving breasts.
Yeah,
That's right.
Okay. Guys, we on the other end, you know, that arrow's great for the women and children, you know, but what do we have on the small end? I mean, we've been seeing more and more of the kids grow up in the 500s, and you know, and kids are the ones that just farm them, right?
Oh,
us adults can hit the target every 1 out of 10 times, right?
Yeah.
But the kids, they're the ones that we want to promote to grow archery. We don't want to break the bank, and they're shooting them, you know, in the dirt, and they're the kids they're the ones that should really be shooting them. So what do we have that's kind of on the low end that would be inexpensive for our kids to grow up with?
Yeah, we've always had what we've called the V-Force Junior, which is just our basic V-Force. It's cut down a little shorter. It's in that weaker 600 spine. But something else that we came out with shortly after that was the Venus and Aries arrows. Those are the Aries being the boys, obviously for the Greek god, in full blue color and full pink or green color.
Oh, cool.
So blue and green for the boys, and then the Venus being the Greek goddess in a full pink and a full purple color. So
that's cool.
Obviously, they're a little bit easier to find for those kids, just slinging them and missing the target and everything.
That's part of the deal.
They're definitely eye catching.
Well, the good thing about these arrows, being carbon, the durability.
Yeah.
The little kids were, a lot of the standard aluminum arrows, they shoot them, they hit the bail, they bend, they break. So
not safe for them either.
Right, and we actually we offer them with feathers, so a lot of the kids shooting off recurves. Mm-hmm. If you try and shoot vanes off there, obviously it deflects off the riser, and it makes them even worse, miss the target even worse. So that product in the last 3 years has actually, that's one of our stronger products, is the kids' arrows.
That's awesome.
And I'm seeing more and more on the dealer end and just across the board, people buying more of these arrows, partly because even the bow manufacturers are starting to make more compounds, not just recurves for kids. Mm-hmm. The Genesis program by Matthews.
That was an amazing program.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And
unbelievable.
We actually built another arrow called the Gen X, which is takes over from the Genesis program, and it's in a 500 spine, and it was well received this year in 2016 at the ATA show.
Good for you guys. All right, guys, we're here at Victory, and we need to take a break. We're going to take a break to a little technology out on the floor that we showed. Now, this is pretty trick because this is a special machine that Victory has actually invented that is microns of a measurement device on arrows. And so how many arrows have we bought? And they were so-called 1/1000th of an inch, right? And we paid extra for that.
Yep.
And so we're not going to banter anybody because we love the archery industry. Everybody at this table loves everybody, and competition is a good thing. Without competition, there's not growth. Yep. We wouldn't be able to separate ourselves. We would monopolize the archery industry like we should be with technology. But aside from that, I just want to go out and show this test that we did just a few minutes ago because it is so impressive.
Excellent.
All right, everybody, we're out in the manufacturing facility here at Victory Archery, and one of the cool things I love about Victory is they've been investing in technology. They're actually starting with the measuring tools to know what the shafts really are, not what they said they are. And so we're not trying to slander anybody. We're not trying to say that one arrow is better than the other. We want you to make your own decision. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to take the most precision device ever developed and made that measures the straightness of an arrow, and we're going to take 3 of the leading manufacturers, and we're going to put them up against one of our arrows here at Victory, and we're going to be able to test it out. So this is pretty cool. So this is a brand new machine, huh, Nate?
Yes, it is. So everybody kept talking about their arrow straighter, their arrow straighter. Well, if our arrow's not the straightest, we want to know it's not the straightest. So they designed this machine. So 3 different lasers reading down to the thousandth on your arrow straightness, 28 inches and in the center.
Now, we're not going to tell you which arrows we're using because we don't want to slander anybody. We love archery. We love all of the companies in archery. There's enough competition. We want everybody to survive and prosper here in the archery industry. But for me, personally, I'm a technical guy. I always want to shoot the best. If it's on my bow, if it's out in the field, it's in my pack, I want it to be the absolute best. And these tests, these technology things really change the way I think. And obviously, even if their arrows weren't the best, now that they have a measuring device, they're going to be better and better and better, and that's what it's really all about. So right here, we're going to test 001 shafts. Think about that. Over the entire length of it, we want it to be 100,000ths of an inch. So we're going to start out with a big fat arrow that's target that lots of archers have actually won with. And what did that turn out to be?
Center's 8.4 total travel, so it's a plus or minus 4.2 thousandths arrow.
So it says it's 1,000th of an inch, and you paid extra for 1,000th of an inch, and it's actually over 4,000ths of an inch. Now, accuracy-wise, that can be contemplated, and obviously downrange. But if I'm buying a 1,000 shaft, I want to know it's 1,000. So here we go. Here we go with another one.
Standard diameter. So that's 5.8 total travel, so plus or minus just under 3 thousandths.
So there you go, 3,000ths of an inch on the one that's wearing a little red paint right there. And then we're going to go to another leading manufacturer that you guys have probably all shot at one time or another. And what do we got there?
4.6 total travel on that in the center.
4.6.
2.3.
2.3 thousandths of an inch. Now, obviously, you've been paying for 1,000ths. It should be 1,000ths, right? We shouldn't be faking us out and telling us stuff. And so now we have one of the brand new Victory shafts that just came out that I'm going to be shooting this year. And what is the true straightness of that?
In the center, it's 1.0, so plus or minus half a thousandths.
Plus or minus half a thousandths. And I'm telling you the truth, guys. We just pulled that out of a box. It didn't come from like some special arrow and we checked like 30 straightnesses. That one right there just came out of a box, out of a shipping container, and we hadn't even tested it before we actually did the thing. So that's an actual real 1,000th of an inch. Now, one of the things a lot of people talk about is spine alignment, okay, and straightness. Both of them have to be right. So that shaft right there is spine aligned, and it's 1,000th of an inch. So, hey, thanks a lot, man. We appreciate all of your hard work and allowing us to come and hang out with you guys. Tests like this really do make the difference if you start caring about what you shoot. Anyway, back to the boys. Well, guys, that was a pretty cool test. And what's really neat about it is what you saw is we pulled an arrow out of the box, and I'm telling you, we didn't even measure it. And we split them in half like the rest of them, and that was a half of a thousandths in orientation on 1,000 shaft. And that was just a production shaft. So it's pretty, they're not all identical, but I'm telling you what, the tolerances are really amazing. It was the only shaft that we tested that was 100,000ths of an inch. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I mean, yeah, over the whole length of it, it blows my mind, you know? Do you really think that it adds some accuracy overall?
In my case, it doesn't, Jim. But someone like you or Jason, maybe. But you know, to me, it's a psychological thing. You know, if I have the best equipment, I'm going to shoot better. But we've done some things where we've had a guy on the line that's a heck of a good shot, and I've told him that all the arrows in his quiver were plus or minus one, where in actual fact we'd actually put ones, threes, and sixes, and even some that were over 10 thousandths out of straightness, and had him shoot them, and we'd built it up. And you know what, Jim? I honestly didn't see a big difference. Was it noticeable on someone that shoots very well? Absolutely. So the difference between a 1 and a 3, that's I don't think we're the humanly, at least with the equipment out there, I don't think we're at a point where someone would really notice the difference. It's been the way the industry's been set up. It's been with all the advertising out there. It's been put in embedded in people's minds that a 1,000's better than a 3, and therefore you pay the extra money. But so if tomorrow you ask me what I'm going to shoot a 1,000 shaft. Obviously, I want all the benefits I can get. But we've proved that. The difference between even a 1 and a 6 is not substantial enough to, you know, sometimes have to pay the difference in money.
Yeah.
So that's being honest. I mean,
yeah, that's what it's all about. Well, guys, I want to thank you very much for joining us. But before we leave, do you have any tips? Do you got any tips? Do you have any tips that you could give somebody? I'm going to start with mine because this is a good one. I think. I think every time that a kid grabs an arrow, right, and he pulls it out of a target, you should inspect it. especially if you're shooting crossbows, because a lot of those, end bolts have actually snapped, and obviously our bows have so much kinetic energy now, right?
Yep.
That it's very likely that if we dry fired one without having any counterweight on it, it could have a real effect. So one of the things I've always taught my kids is just give it a slight little bend. See if you can hear it or see it in anywhere when you pull it out of the target. So pull it out of the target, give it a little spin and a bend, and then look at the nocks, obviously before you shoot it. But what do you got, Steve? You got anything for us?
Well, actually, not just kids, Jim. That goes across the board for any carbon arrows, grown-ups included. And I think that's something that needs to be more prevalent, talked about more in our industry.
Safety first.
Safety first, because liability, we obviously don't want people getting injured with our product or anybody else's product. Yeah. It just hurts our sport. Besides checking for the carbon, nocks, I see a lot of people with the different strings. A safety tip is actually looking to inspect your nocks, make sure they're not cracked, make sure you haven't hit them, and because that could
especially
cause
when they
a dry
shoot like
fire.
you,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're knocking nocks off, you're shooting, aren't you?
No, it's Jason knocking my nocks
Jason,
off.
Yeah, nice, Jason. What is your arrow allotment for years, Steve? How many arrows do you shoot?
Probably nothing like you, Jim. Trust me, you set the all-time record for everybody. I've never known an individual to shoot over 60-some dozen in a year. But we're going broke just keeping you supplied with arrows.
I'm sorry about that.
Realistically, I probably go to 12 dozen arrows a year.
Yeah. Good for you.
It's not that I don't go look for them. It's just I miss a lot.
I look for them honest. How about you, Jason?
I'd say 12 dozen's a good call.
Yeah.
For sure, absolutely. As far as a tip, I'm going to go away from safety, since we were just talking about kids, to get those kids more into shooting and get them excited about archery and stuff.
Yeah.
Get them out there, get them shooting, and blow up some balloons, put them on the target. We're all about instant gratification.
Yeah, you're right.
Watch a kid blow up a balloon on a target, they get excited, they scream, they yell, they jump around, they think it's awesome.
You bet.
Fill some up with some water, do something like that, but that's the future of our wonderful industry and our sport. So
for sure,
just get them out there.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys. It's pretty amazing to look behind the scenes and to see the technology and the changes and the people who care. I mean, I've often been a guy that cannot be bought by money. A lot of people think, oh, Jim's sponsored, so he's bragging about this or that. No, but I do brag if I find a product that I truly believe in, I see the technology difference, and I love testing things for myself. When it's in my bow, in my environment, and I can compare it against something, or I see some of the tests like we did down earlier, I know that when I'm buying a 100,000 shaft and it says 100,000ths of an inch, it is. When it's spinal lined, it means it's spinal lined. When I'm buying the accessories, with that nock that fits on the string that has a certain amount of snapping power, and it's got trigger points that it's actually done, or the Outset Insert that I know is extremely tough, shooting them into center blocks and having the shaft. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I can't imagine me even picking another shaft after I know this much about it. And I'm not brown nosing either one of you.
But Jim, just regarding your situation and your involvement with Victory, first of all, I'm surprised you're still with us, because we don't pay you that much, and in arrows we do. But I got a part of the reason we developed this new Outset, both in the stainless steel and aluminum, was when I first met you, one of your only complaints has been that the bending and the lack of performance, the lack of concentricity of the Outset,
straightness, right?
So
actually,
this Outset right here obviously looks significantly different than what we had the previous years. The reason for the fluting, besides giving it the column effect, it allowed the screw machines to be able to hold this in a much more consistent manner and be able to tap and drill the threaded, the 832 hole down there, which on the old ones, because they were just a round piece of bar stock, it wandered on us. And a lot of people, when they put broadheads in there, would spin them, and the broadheads would wobble, especially on a fixed 3-blade head.
Yeah.
Very difficult. So today, with the changes we've made to both on the rip and the VAPs, you'll see that'll improve. And I'm dying for you to give us some field reports on how this performs for you.
Would love to do that. I just need another 60 dozen extra, and I'll be able to pull it out for you.
Absolutely.
Anyway, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining us here. It's kind of cool to listen behind the scenes and seeing what's going on in the archery industry, and to be a part of it, and being down here in Southern California where it sun shines and it's not raining, and it's odd for me not to have my bow in my hand, but I guess we're working on archery this week instead of in archery. So
Correct.
Thank you very much, Steve. We really
Thanks, Jim.
appreciate all of your time,
Thank you.
bro, and
Appreciate
for you guys caring and changing the archery industry for sure. All right, guys, thanks for joining us, and we've got another podcast coming to you next week. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, guys.